everybody. Welcome to Engaging Remote Meetings. We are live in our Mystic branch today. So if you hear any noise in the background, we are live in a branch. My name is Miria Gray. I'm the Community Education Officer here at Chelsea Groton Bank. We have some other people live here with us, paying attention to the meeting. If you have questions, you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or you can type into chat. And we have Chris Sabine, who will be reading us the questions that you have. So let's just jump right in here. I know everybody's kind of on their lunchtime today. So basically, my name is Mary Gray. I'm the Community Education Officer. If you have anything that you really are looking to take away from today's class, please feel free to let us know, because I want to make sure to answer whatever questions that you might have and touch on everything. So if you have something you want to make sure that I get to, you can feel free to type that into chat, and Crystal will make sure that we touch on it at some point. Okay, so I have broken this presentation down into 3 different categories today. So we're talking before the meeting, during the meeting, and then after the meeting. And Krista is going to be launching some poll questions for everybody. So if she could launch the first one now, that would be great, just so I can kind of get a feel of where everybody is. But before the meeting, you're going to want to plan. So remote meetings are a lot different than in-person meetings, right? Lots of things can go wrong, such as today. I had another meeting that stacked right up on top of this one, which meant that I was rushing to get here to get on for a remote meeting. That can happen in person too, but what can go wrong? What's your A, B, and C plan? What happens if people are texting you that they can't log in? What happens if you are on and you don't realize but you have no audio? And what happens, in those situations? Do you have somebody else that can lead the meeting for you if that happens? Do you know what to do, how to clear up the situation? So the first thing to try if you're in a remote meeting and you don't have audio, and you normally do, is to assign somebody else to be the co-host with you, leave the meeting, and restart your computer. Maybe you can leave that co-host with your first task for the meeting, whatever happens to be the first item on your agenda. When you as the host sign back in to a Zoom particularly, you will be reassigned as the host for that meeting, and you will take back over controls. But just having that second person, that backup person, in case something goes wrong. We've had examples where somebody's internet, goes out, or their audio goes down, something happens, they need to walk away. What's your plan B? What's your plan C? Just so that there's not a ton of confusion. And the best thing to do is get on the call early and make sure that everything is up and working and set up. This will allow you to kind of get in, relax, and make sure that everything's okay. Some of the best habits to form are to have people go into a waiting room, which you were put into here, so that they can log into their meeting and they can just wait until you're ready to admit them. You may have a co-host in the meeting or somebody that's going to be presenting to your team that you want to admit first, to have a conversation with them before you let everybody else in. So setting up that waiting room allows you the time to be able to admit those people that you want to talk to first before you admit everybody else. So then the second part is your agenda. So it's a class, a meeting, your agenda is really important. If it's just a gathering where everybody's getting together and brainstorming, you may not need an agenda, but you do need a goal. So making sure that your agenda is done in advance of the meeting and goes out to people is really important, because that will alert people, especially members of your team, if they need to be prepared with information on a project that they're working on, if something's upcoming, they'll be able to see so that they can be prepared for that meeting. Even shooting out an agenda half an hour in advance of a meeting is better than just popping one up on the screen during the meeting. So having an agenda, or at least some thoughts, when you send out that calendar invitation, you could just put your bullet points right in that calendar invitation. It doesn't have to be anything formal, but just let everybody know what you want to talk about, because that will help keep you on track when you actually start that meeting. All right, so your meeting invites, who should be there? So a lot of times what happens during a meeting is that everybody on the team gets invited to the meeting, because that's what we do. We invite teams to meetings, right? Everybody gets invited. But when you're talking about a remote meeting and having people staying engaged in that meeting, who needs to be there? If you have members on your team that aren't involved in a particular project, it may not be the best idea to keep them on the meeting, because they're not involved in that. They don't really need to be there, and they've lost maybe that hour of time that they could be producing something else. So, it's like that death by meeting thing. It's really easy, especially right now, to schedule back to back to back to back meetings, because we don't have to go anywhere. We're just getting off of one Zoom meeting and getting on to another Zoom meeting. So really thinking through who actually needs to participate in this meeting, who do you want? If you want somebody to hear what's going on because they're going to be working later on down the project, yes, they need to be invited. If they're not in it in any way, then you don't necessarily need to invite them. I'm on the marketing team at Chelsea. I'm not involved in every conversation, because I am not involved in website design. I'm not involved with working with other departments. So, some of those things I'm not involved in, and I do not feel bad for not having been invited to those meetings. I have other things that I could be doing. And I think if you're upfront with your teams about it, they will not be sad that they weren't invited to every meeting. So then the next thing is to know your invitees. Know who is on your team. What are their personalities? Because you need to be able to maintain control of that meeting. Meetings can go sideways really quickly if you have that one person on the team who starts talking and doesn't stop talking. They're telling you about an idea and they go down the rabbit hole of that idea, and then you can't get back to the rest of your agenda. So having very specific goals that you want to get to in that meeting, and then the more specific, the better. So not just talk about the website, but talk about, whatever page on the website, or this aspect, or the colors or the fonts, or, we need to have more pertinent images on our website. Being very specific as to the types of things that you want to talk about, and time box everything. So if you want to keep people to an hour, for example, because you don't want the meeting to go on for 3 hours, you think you can get all of your agenda items done in an hour, make sure that if you've got 5 things on your list, you're assigning a time amount to talk about those things. Because then you can hook somebody off, right? So, you know, we've talked about staffing enough for today. We need to get through the rest of our agenda. We only have 40 minutes left, so let's move on. We can add it to our next agenda, right? So thinking through, not, you know, being rude, but saying, you know, we have more things to get to today. We have a very limited amount of time. So here's what we're going to do. And you can assign actually specific amounts of time to people. So if you want your employees to be pitching in, say, I'd like to give you each 5 minutes to tell me what you think about this. And then give them a warning when they're getting close, you know, saying, you know, we've got about 30 seconds left for you to summarize, Julia. Please tell us, you know, your last couple of points, and then it's time for Brad to tell us about what he thinks. Instead of just cutting them off, giving them, you know, a minute, 30 seconds to finalize their point, let them know that you're coming close to the end of the time, and then moving on. Because you get that one person that's talking and talking and talking, you've lost everybody else in that meeting. All right, so that was all of our before meeting planning. So now we're talking about during the meeting. Does anybody have any questions? No, okay. So during the meeting, you've done all your planning, you're confident, you're ready to go, meeting time. So introduce everybody on the call. Very often we get on a meeting and we don't know everybody in the meeting, because especially now, it might not just be your team. It might be your team and somebody from another department, somebody from another organization. You're bringing people in, you have groups of people from all over, you know, making sure that everybody knows each other, because some people are calling in, some people have their cameras off. So you just want to give everybody the opportunity to introduce themselves, tell everybody what they do, and then, you know, move on. Make sure that you allot some time for that in your agenda when you're setting up, so that you don't spend the first 5 minutes of your first agenda item doing this. Make sure like this is in your introductory time or whatever. And small talk. So pre-COVID, when we go to a meeting and we're meeting in person, there's always that downtime before the meeting where you're connecting with other people in your department, other people from your organization that you may not see all the time because you're arriving a little bit early and the meeting hasn't started yet, or maybe a couple of people are running late, so you're waiting for them. So there is a time when employees have a chance to connect with each other. And right now we're missing them. So we might not have that chance to connect with everybody. So allotting some time to have that pre-meeting small talk is important. So whether you invite people to arrive to your meeting early, say, I will be on 15 minutes before, if everybody wants to come in early and, you know, get a chance to have a conversation or catch up. And we're going to start exactly at X amount of time, but, you know, come early, or schedule it into the meeting. It could be at the beginning of the meeting. It could be at the end of the meeting. You could have people stay late if they wanted to. But really give people the opportunity to connect with one another, because remote meetings right now, we're into the meeting, we're starting the meeting, we're rushing through the meeting, we're getting off the meeting, and we're going to the next meeting. And we were talking about this as a team not too long ago, about how you would have that decompressed time. Like you had time to think through, because whether you had to walk from your office to a meeting location, or or you had to drive somewhere. So there was always some time to think about the meeting that you're going into, and some decompressed time to take in everything that you talked about at the meeting before you went back to work or you're on to the next meeting. Now because we're scheduling things back to back to back to back, and we don't necessarily have time to let the information that we got in that meeting sink in. So, you can do things like know that your meeting is only going to be half an hour, schedule people an hour, which then you end the meeting early, give them their half an hour back, and let them have that time to decompress before the next thing. So if you know your staff is really busy, don't do it every time, because your staff will get you figured out, and they'll start booking things earlier and earlier. But every once in a while, give them some of that time back, and they'll have that time to decompress or catch up. Say, we've done all our business today. We have an extra half an hour. If people want to stay on the call and chat, they can, or feel free to get off and catch up on something that you need to do, or, grab a glass of water, or whatever it is you need. So then, hopefully, you have a goal for this meeting. So, like, our goal today is to talk through how to keep people engaged in your meeting. I don't know how many meetings I've sat in that I've been looking at my Zoom screen and people are in boxes in front of me, and like half of the people are looking down and they're checking out their phone, or they're side looking over here, they're not paying attention, or they were paying attention, all of a sudden now their camera's off and you're not sure why. So making sure that people are engaged in what you're doing is really important, because otherwise, why are we having these meetings? So start with your goal. So at the beginning of the meeting, after the small talk, before you get into the agenda, make sure you're letting people know what the goal of that meeting is today. So our goal of the meeting is to get through, whatever it is that your goal is. To talk about this project, to talk about, whatever it is. Could be a small goal, could be a large goal. But what are you trying to walk away with at the end of that meeting? When you're all said and done, that one thing that's going to make that a successful meeting, what is that? So if people know what that is at the beginning, like you were coming to a class today to learn about this. It's very clear, right? I didn't just invite you here and to have a conversation. So what is the end goal that you want people to walk away knowing, or for you to collect that information from people? And contributing. All right, so this is really difficult because remote meetings are hard. One person's talking, you think they're done pause, so somebody goes to say something else, and then they end up talking over somebody else. So it's really important to have natural flow of conversation. So the one thing that I would say is to disable private chat, which you can do, I know, on Zoom. I'm not sure about other formats. So on Zoom, if you're in there, you can disable private chat, meaning if Krista and I were in a meeting together and I didn't like something that was said, or I wanted to make a comment, I just couldn't share it with just Krista. If I want to make a comment, if I want to make a chat, I have to chat to the group. So that keeps people on task because they're not having a private side conversation. So if you were in a regular meeting around a table, you're not going to be having that side conversation with the person sitting next to you because it's rude and people would notice. It's really easy in a remote meeting to have a side conversation with somebody. You can make it a little bit more difficult because they'd have to text, go outside of the platform to do it. But disabling private chat will stop a little bit of that side conversation. So if somebody has a comment, if they have something they want to say, they can definitely type it into chat, but it's going to the whole group. Mute is your friend. So you can mute everybody in the conversation. And then as you're asking people or talking to people, have them unmute themselves. So you can call on people. They have the ability to raise their hand, or type into chat that they've got something that they would like to comment or say. If you're running the meeting, start the meeting off. If somebody else is going to be presenting, you can go down the agenda. You can say, now it's time for so-and-so to present. Please unmute yourself. And then you mute yourself. Think about all of the meetings that you go to where there's background noise. Parents are home, which is fine because, kids are out of school and it's just the reality of the situation right now. But the kids having the conversation or watching television in the background is distracting. So just having everybody muted will make it so it's easier for people to concentrate on what's being said, on what's happening on the screen, instead of being distracted by what's happening in the background of 12 people's homes. Clarify in advance of the meeting that people's participation is expected. So when we sign on to a meeting, especially if it's not something that happens all of the time, we may not know what the expectations are for ourselves or other people. So if we're having a remote meeting, if it's the first time you've done it, if it's something that you'd like to implement, make sure that people understand that. Make sure that they know that you're going to expect some kind of participation from them. So I have a little chart down, like a little image down here, and everybody's participation does not have to be equal. It doesn't have to be the four, pieces of the pie coming together. But just letting people know that during the course of the meeting, you want to make sure that they're giving you some kind of feedback, some kind of input, a suggestion that you want to hear from everybody at least one time. Because there are people in a conversation who, we definitely have the leaders who come out and tell everybody what they think and dominate a conversation. And some of the personalities in our teams is that some of our more laid back team members may feel intimidated by that, may say, well, they're probably going to say it anyway, but give them the authority to tell people what they think. So making sure that everybody is contributing. How can you do that? So you can add poll questions like we did today. I added 3 poll questions, into this conversation. So you can expect, if you're at a small meeting, if it's your team, you tell people, I want 100% participation in this poll. I want everybody to answer this question. If you're having a class or a webinar or something like that, just putting the poll question out there to help keep people engaged, kind of figure out where they're at and making sure that you're touching on all of the things. Poll questions are generally that they're going to choose an A, B, C, D answer. So again, you have to think about what those poll questions are in advance. At least with Zoom, you have to pre-prep those poll questions in advance of the meeting, because you have to do it from the Zoom online. You can't do it through the portal. So you have to think about what you want from your team members at that point. Engage with those who phoned in. So if you've got people, it's a lot easier to engage with those people that you can see. And it's very easy to forget that there are people on the call that have muted and they're just on the phone. So as people are coming into the meeting, making sure that you're identifying who people are. If somebody's coming in with a phone number, if you're running the meeting, you can change their phone number to their name, which is super helpful. So if you've admitted somebody from the waiting room into the meeting, say, oh, who have we got here today, unless you recognize their phone number. And then just changing their phone number to their name, which makes it easier for other people in the meeting to identify them, to know who's talking. Because if you have 4 or 5 phone numbers calling in, if somebody's talking, you have no idea who's talking, who's suggesting something, who is asking a question. And to change a phone number to a name, it just takes a couple of seconds, and it will help you and the rest of the people in the meeting connect with that person. So it's just not some nebulous person, that you have no idea who they are. Talk about what challenges people are facing. So, asking your team, asking people what challenges they're facing. If you're talking about a project, what would stop you from doing this? What's our holdup on these things? So having a conversation about something is important, but asking for feedback on the challenges is really important, because a lot of times people are afraid to talk about what the challenges to getting something done are, because typically when you've got a project, it's somebody's initiative, it's somebody's brainchild, they're really behind it, but thinking through what the challenges of getting it done might be are really going to help you and your team and everybody else be on the same page and think through. Right now, getting anything done is hard. One of the major challenges that we're all trying to overcome right now is the snail mail, right? The US Postal Service. If you're doing a project and you're accepting mail-in bids, but you have a deadline, how long do you extend that deadline? Because maybe they sent something out on time, but it took 3 weeks to get to you. So, talking through what are some of the challenges that we're facing right now? What are the challenges that we're facing as a team? What are the challenges our organization is facing? And really trying to think through how those challenges are going to affect whatever your meeting is about. And usually that is a good talking point for those people who have a tendency to shy away from the conversation. And then asking, so if you've gone through the whole meeting, you've talked about a project, you've talked about maybe what's going on in everybody's lives, you're presenting a topic. When those people walk away, we've had this big meeting, everybody's speaking, who's taking notes, who knows whose role is what? Are you clear when you leave that meeting if you have anything that you're supposed to be doing? What is your role in this project? What do you need to get done? Is there something? Remote meetings are problematic in that if somebody's talking and somebody else starts talking, oftentimes trains of thought are lost. So there may have been on a train of thought to get you to a goal, and then if somebody interrupts with something else, all of a sudden you're on a different track, and maybe you didn't get quite to where you needed to be. So you could have people leaving that meeting a little bit confused. And in a regular meeting, maybe somebody would stay after and say, or catch you in the hall and say, hey, we were talking about this. You mentioned that I would have to do something, and then you got halfway through explaining what that was going to be, and then, I didn't really catch the end of it. But in a remote meeting, when you say goodbye to everybody and you hit end, everybody's gone. There's no chance for somebody to say, okay, I didn't really catch what you were trying to say. I'm not 100% sure what you need me to do. So filling this in at the end, are you clear on what your role is, what you should be working on? If you're not clear, let's get that out in the open, like, let's figure out, where we're missed. I say things sometimes and I know what I'm saying because it's in my brain and it seems clear to me, but what's clear to me might not be clear to everybody else. So that's why I say, if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me. If I have said something that you don't understand what I'm saying, please feel free to ask a question. Stop me at any time. Because what makes sense to me might not make sense to you. And that happens a lot. And sometimes people are afraid to say that they don't understand what they're supposed to be doing. So opening the door and saying, look, is everybody clear on what they're supposed to be doing? We had a laundry list of things, of roles and jobs for people today. Does everybody know what you're doing? If you don't, let's go back over it, right? Because if you've said that, if you've given the opportunity, then you have an opening to be upset if somebody doesn't understand because they didn't ask. But if you don't give them the opportunity, if they walked away and they're confused, then it's a miscommunication error, not only on your part but theirs. So trying to take that miscommunication away, especially remotely, is important. So be engaging, good visuals, lively interactions. The worst meetings to go to is when everybody's sitting at a desk and everybody's like hands are, and everybody's talking in a monotone voice and you're bored out of your skull. There's nothing to look at, so having something, even if you pull up a whiteboard in the screen and let people write their notes on it, even if it's you share an image every once in a while, you have different people present and ask them to share things. Have some good visuals, have some lively interactions. Even if you don't want visuals the whole time, popping one up every once in a while will break up the monotony of just the conversation back and forth. Breaks for long meetings. So 1 hour meetings, nobody needs a break. If you're running into a 2-hour meeting because you're having a planning session for something, schedule in some breaks because people need to go to the bathroom or let their dog out or, get something to drink. And nobody can sit for 2 hours and think about something. We wouldn't do it in an in-person meeting normally. We'd have snacks, we'd have drinks, we'd offer coffee and bottled water. That doesn't happen when you're sitting, at home. You're in wherever it is you've set up, and unless that's your kitchen, your refrigerator is not right there to get a drink or a bottle of water. So, if you've scheduled a longer meeting, a planning session, say we're going to work for 40 minutes and then I'm going to give everybody a 5-minute break. And then we're just going to come back. And then, just break it up. Say, I want, we're going to break now, everybody come back, blah, blah, blah. We're going to start right back at X amount of time. It gives people a chance to shut off their cameras for 5 minutes, relax their faces. Think about people are staring at you in a meeting and having that crazy smile on your face for 2 hours because you're afraid to relax your face or do whatever it is because you feel like everybody's looking at you, even though they're probably not. So giving people a break, letting them relax, take a phone call, check their email, whatever it is. And then look at the camera. So what we have a tendency to do when we're in meetings is see the people on the screen, and so we're looking at the screen. So we're looking here, even though our camera may be here. So if you're looking down, if I'm looking down here, all you're seeing is my forehead. So your audience is your camera. So that's where you should be looking. So if you have a camera on your laptop, great. If it's right in the center, then those people are like right below it. Not everybody has that. Some people have a webcam, you know, that's more up here. So you should be looking at that. If you've got multiple screens going on, I know some people set up dual screens, their camera's on this screen, but everybody's faces are on this screen. That becomes very difficult. If you're looking over here, your camera is looking at the side of your face. So be aware of who your audience is, and your audience is your camera. So know that. And know that your camera should be set at kind of an eye level situation. Otherwise, you get those situations where your camera is below you, so you're looking at people's noses, or it's coming down at you, or you can only see half people's faces because the camera is so high that you're seeing their nose and like 10 feet to the ceiling. You know, just be aware of how you're appearing on that screen. A lot of people don't like to look at themselves while they're on camera. So they'll set it to speaker view or gallery view, depending upon, you know, what's going on. Make sure you know what you look like, because people are, if they're on speaker view and you're speaking and all they can see is like from that show Home Improvement, if all they're looking at is the Wilson, the fence below, and like all they're seeing is his nose and his eyes, like they don't, you know, that's not super engaging, right? Speak up. So one of the hard things about remote meetings is everybody's audio is different. Some people are calling in by phone. Some people are using headsets. Some people are using the audio on their computer, and every single person's audio sounds different. So think about speaking up. Nobody is going to complain that you're too loud, right? You're not screaming into the headset. You're speaking up so that everybody can hear you. If you are in a cavernous room, you're going to raise your voice so that everybody can hear you. You feel like in a remote meeting that everybody is right there because they're right in front of your face, but they really are, you know, tens and hundreds of miles away. So your voice is going over the airwaves, over phone lines, through speaker systems, and everybody's is different. So speak up. You know, test your audio before you start the meeting in that 15-minute session. Can everybody hear me okay? Just, you know, do I need to speak up? Am I too soft? You know, figure out how you're coming across. Make sure you're framed well on the screen. We talked about that, right? So nobody wants to see your ceiling or your floor or half your face or up your nose. Make sure that you know what you look like on the screen. And then you get through your whole meeting. Everything went well. You planned, you prepped, you kept everybody engaged. Nobody was off daydreaming somewhere. And you got, in case they were, at the end, you checked to make sure that everybody knew what their job was going to be. So after the meeting, what do you do? So you need to send some follow-up, right? Because even in a regular in-person meeting, you should send follow-up, right? What did we talk about? Summarize the main points of your meeting. Thank you for coming to the meeting today. Here are the 5 main points that I took away from the meeting. Did anybody hear anything that I missed? Because again, we're all remote, right? So even the host with the best intentions who's paying attention might not catch something, right? Could you have, if you're not good at listening and taking notes at the same time, could you have somebody else on your team be the note taker for that meeting? Okay. Could you have somebody else be the timekeeper for that meeting? Keep people engaged that way, right? If if you've got a 5-person meeting going on and you're speaking, somebody else is taking notes, and somebody else is keeping the time, at least 3 of you are engaged, right? 3 of you are paying attention. So you know, giving out tasks because, and then at the end, you as the facilitator of this meeting could have whoever took the notes summarize and send the email to the team or the group. Highlight any action items and make sure you know the individual that's supposed to accomplish those action items and when is the expected due date, right? Because if you give me an action item and you said, hey, Miria, by the end of the week today, I need your February plan for classes. Okay, well, February is a long time away. So maybe I would wait till mid-January to get that to you. But if you said to me, hey, Miria, we need to start marketing your February classes. So I would like them from you by the end of the week this week. That to me is a whole different level of involvement on my part than like what might be 2 weeks from now. So you need to let people know what the priority level of items are, when you expect them to get done, because then they can give you pushback on that, right? We don't always know what everybody is working on. So I'll give you an example. In our team, in our marketing team, we market for the entire bank. So not every department knows what other departments are asking from us. And that may be the truth and the same with your meetings. You don't know what is expected from people from other places, right? If they're working on other projects, if they're working with other teams, if they do other types of things, if they've got a laundry list of things that are already due for the end of the week, could you push it out until Monday? Look, I know you need it by Friday. I know you'd like to have it by Friday, but if I could get it to you by the end of the day on Monday, that would really give me the little bit of breathing room I need to make sure I do a good job for you. Because in the end, we want everybody's job to be a good job. We don't want them to just do it because it needs to get done. We want them to do it and do it correctly. It takes a lot longer if somebody does the job for you and then it's a rush job because they didn't have the time to do it correctly. And then you have to go back and ask them to fix it. So, you know, if you have that conversation about expectations when things are due, then you can have that back and forth before you even get started so that everybody is on the same page. Nobody's feeling pressure and you don't feel disappointed that they didn't get it to you by that date or it wasn't the top quality of work that you were expecting. All right, so that is the end of my presentation, but I am more than happy. I do a ton of remote classes. We have remote meetings all of the time. We interact, we do engagements, both social and business. So if you have any questions, if there's something that I didn't touch on that you feel like you need some help with, please feel free to ask me questions and I'm happy to answer.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
What's the proper etiquette if you are in a meeting? As someone, like you're having the meeting.
Sure.
And I'm on the screen with other people.
Right.
And my significant other comes home. So I'm looking and I just need like 30 seconds to say,
sure.
Hi, I'm on this meeting. So do you turn your camera off?
So yeah, I would turn your camera off if it's a large meeting, you know, if it's like a really big meeting, if it's a
like our all employee meeting,
like our all employee meeting and there's 150 people on the call, people aren't going to really notice if you click off your camera for 30 seconds. I would just go ahead and do it and do what you need. You know, make sure you're on mute, shut your camera off, have the conversation, and then, you know, you get back on it and do whatever you have to do. If it's a small meeting, like, and you've got 4 people on the screen and somebody's going to notice, I would just type into chat, you know, I'll be right back. I just need 30 seconds, shut off on mute, shut off on the screen, you know, and do whatever you need to do. Because it's true. We're in a crazy situation. You know, my husband comes home from work and I'm in the middle of teaching a class. He knows that if the bedroom door is shut, not to not to come
In or?
in, like, because he could all of a sudden be in the middle of a class,
Right.
you know, but so, you know, he'll stop if the bedroom door's shut. But then I also need to remember, when it's getting close to the end of the day, sometimes I shut the bedroom door because I'm working and I can hear my kids. And so I shut the door because I'm trying to shut out some noise.
Sure.
So I have to remember in the back of my head
Open
the door when it gets time to so he doesn't think I'm in the middle of something and just like stay out in the kitchen for an hour.
Right.
So it's so much more difficult now. Some things are easier in some respects.
Mm-hmm.
Some things are more difficult, but you know, absolutely, you know, just typing into chat, even if it's just a private message to the person that's speaking, you don't need to tell everybody right on the call that your husband came home. Just shoot a note and just be like, I just need 30 seconds. I'll be right back.
Right. For whatever,
Whatever it is.
Got it. Thank you.
Your dog's barking
Well,
like incessantly because the UPS man is there. You know, It happens.
Mm-hmm. It does.
I need to go put him in a room somewhere. I'll be right back. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do we have any other questions, Ms. Crystal? Or
We just had a comment from Melinda saying, great tip for the host to hang on the Zoom a little longer. I had a question about backgrounds for Zooms. Should you put up a virtual background if the room that you're working in is, say, a little bit messy, or, you know, say you can only do a Zoom meeting from the bathroom? That's the only place in your house that's quiet. What would you suggest?
so so I use virtual backgrounds all of the time, but again, I've been working home for close to 10 months now. So I've gone through a metamorphosis of making it work correctly. Backgrounds, if they're work correctly, are amazing. They look great. You look like you're someplace else. I actually use this branch as my background, and half the time people assume I'm just sitting in the branch, but then they're like, wait, but there's nobody else there. So if it's really good, I would say yes. If you're that person that like is all of a sudden like falling into space because your virtual background's not working as well, then I would say no. If it's going to be more distracting than it is anything else, I would say no. But if you can get it to work pretty good, I would say yes. But I would test things out. You can start a new meeting and it's just yourself. So you could go through and test all kinds of different virtual backgrounds. I have found less busy backgrounds work better. So if it's not a ton of colors, if there's not like shooting stars and laser lights, it works better. Because what the virtual background does is it looks for you as a person, what you're wearing, and it tries to separate those colors out from the things that are behind you. Virtual backgrounds work great if you have a solid color behind you. So if you have to use your bathroom and you've got like a solid tile in the shower, open up that shower curtain, sit on the edge of your tub, put it on your sink, and like have at the virtual background. If you're at a place where there's a bunch of busy colors behind you, the backgrounds might not work as well because it has a hard time like sorting out what are you wearing versus what's in the background versus what is this image that I'm supposed to be showing. I use a green screen sometimes, and when I do, I have to remember not to wear green, not to try and show anything that's green. I've done crafts before where I was like, oh, green paper, and then all of a sudden I'm disappeared. You know, we've made a dinosaur before and I ended up having to make a purple dinosaur because making a green dinosaur did not work. So it's just doing that pre-prep, thinking through. I didn't think it through until I started to record and I was like, wait, this is not going to work. So it was a really quick change. So again, have that ABC.
Great. I think we are all set with questions
Awesome.
from us and from our participants. So I think
Awesome.
we're good.
Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of the week.